If you are new here, this is the most beginner-friendly complete web development course, and these are some of the projects we will be covering in this course. I upload lots of lessons per week, so please subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss any of them. I respond promptly to comments, so if you want to ask or say something, feel free to drop it in the comments. If you missed any of the previous lessons, the link to the entire playlist is down in the description box. Let's get started. The concept you are going to cover in this section is called the JavaScript Document Object Model. Alright, in short, JavaScript DOM. Right. So with the JavaScript HTML DOM, JavaScript can access and change all the contents or all the elements of an HTML document. Okay, it can change the styles, the attributes, it can add or remove attributes or styles or elements, and it can also handle events like clicks. Okay, so when a user clicks, JavaScript will then handle the event. Okay, so when you talk about DOM or document object model is simply JavaScript or simply we considering the document, which is the HTML document, as an object, right? And we've talked about objects before in our universal programming concepts, right? And we remember we said that objects have properties. Okay, so in this case you have the elements here will have properties, all right, and you have some methods to access these elements. Remember that objects also have methods as well. So essentially we are going to be treating the JavaScript elements as objects. All right, so this is what you call the DOM tree, right? So you have the document and the root element, okay, which is this the HTML element. Remember that HTML element wraps everything, so it is the root element. And inside the HTML element, we have the head and then the body as the two main elements. All right. So inside the head, we have something like the title and then the rest. Okay. And inside the body, we can have an element, an anchor. We can have an H1, and then the element over here, right? The anchor element here can also have attributes as well, and it can also have the text inside it. Right, so this is the tree, and it can go down like that. So inside the body you can have a div, which would be a child of the div, and then within that one you also have children. And remember the terms we use. So this is the parent to both this and that. All right, and this is also parent to this and that. Okay, so we say that this and that are children to this element. Okay, and this element and that element are on the same level, so we say that they are siblings. All right, those are the terminologies that we'll be using. Okay, so let's create a folder for this part. Let's create a new folder and then name it JS DOM, right? And then we'll go to our VS Code and then open the folder from there. Okay, so let's create a few files over here. First, we want to create a file. Let's call it dom.html, and then we'll create another file, and then we'll call it dom.js, right, for our JavaScript. Okay, so let's get our boilerplate code. Let's change this to JS DOM like that. Okay, we won't be using CSS for this part. So inside the body, we want to link our JavaScript. I remember where we said we link the JavaScript right here. So we want to use the script tag. Okay, you want to set the source. Okay, in this case it will be dom.js like that, and then you close our script tag. Let's go back to our JavaScript and make sure our script tag is working. So I want to do an alert, right? And I'll say JS has been connected. Okay, so let's launch our live server. Okay, so we have our live server over here. If you save the code you run, JS has been connected. Perfect. So now our JavaScript has been connected. Okay, so let's quickly add some content over here that we are going to modify using our JavaScript. To start with, I want to add a simple button. I want to add a button over here. All right, so I want to add a button and I want to give it an ID of my button. So it is with this ID that you access this element in the JavaScript. Okay, and I want to say click here to display a message like that. All right, and I also want to, so this will be a button that will click to display a message, and I want to create an H1, and this is where the message that you see will live. Okay, so I want to name it message. All right, then I'll close, but I won't put anything here because I want to use JavaScript to dynamically add content to this H1. Okay, I want to use JavaScript to add the text to this H1. All right, so I'll comment out this alert. Okay, so first I have to access my button, and to do that I have to create a variable. I'll call it button, and I use document.getElement by ID. I hope you remember all this. Right, and then the ID that we use my button like that. Okay, the variable name doesn't necessarily have to match what you used in or the ID. Okay, so I could have let them match. I could have called this my button, and the ID is also my button, but it doesn't have to match. You can make it anything at all. All right, now I told you that when you use the DOM, each element has properties, and we can have methods on that property, methods on the element as well. So this is an example of a method. Okay, so this get element by ID is a method on the document object over here. All right. Okay. So now what I want to do is that I want to add an event listener to the button. The event I want to add is a click event. All right, then I want to call a function. All right, I want to call a function called show message like that. Okay, now I have to create the function. Of course, the function is called show message, and notice this. You see I called the function over here. Okay, and then I'm creating the function down here. You can do that with functions. All right, but you can't do that with variables. So if you call or if you mention a variable here, you should have created the variable before. So the variable should have been up the code. All right, but with functions it doesn't matter. It still works whether it is you created it after you called it, or you created it before you called it. All right, and actually over here I'm not calling the function. I'm just putting a reference to the function. Remember we said when you call a function you add and open the parentheses over here. So this is just a reference to the function. All right, so I want to create the function over here. I forgot the function keyword, and open and close my curly braces. Now what do I want the function to do? First I want to grab the container for the message. Okay, this h1 over here. So let's call it message container, something like this, and then we want to grab that container by saying document.getElement by ID, and the ID of that container is message, remember. All right, and what do we want to do? We want to change a property of this element. Okay, the container, the h1 element. And what property do we want to change? It's the inner HTML. All right, don't worry about this for now. This is just to show you how the DOM works. We'll get into the details of how all these things work. All right, and then I want to set it to hello. All right, so let's save it and see what we have. Okay, so this is what we have. When I click it, you should have the message showing over here. So refresh it to go back, click it, and then we have our message here. So let me take you to what we just did once again. So first we created a button over here using HTML. All right, and we created an h1, and we didn't put anything in the h1 because we said we are going to dynamically put it there with the JavaScript. And when we came to the JavaScript, we first grabbed the button using the ID of the button, which is my button, and then we added an event listener to the button. Don't worry about this event listener thing, we will explain it better in subsequent lessons. And I call the function over here. Okay, I put a reference to the function, not call a function. And I created the function down here, and inside the function, what I'm doing is that first I grab the H1 over here using the ID, which is message, and then I changed a property of that element, which is the inner HTML, and then I changed it to hello, how are you doing? All right, and this is the results. So that was a quick introduction to what the DOM is capable of. In the next lesson, we'll look at how we access the HTML content using JavaScript, all right, just like we did for CSS. So when we did the CSS, we mentioned that you could access the content of the HTML documents using the ID or the class or the tag names and all that. Similarly, in JavaScript, you can also access the content of HTML using the ID, the class name, the tag name, or you can also use something that looks just like a CSS selector. All right. So let's see some of these in action. Okay, so let's go into our HTML and create some content that we will modify using JavaScript. Okay, first I want to create an unordered list. All right, I want to give it the ID of books. Inside the list, I want a number of books. Okay, each book will have the class book and a special class. So the first one I'll give red book. Right, and this book I want to call Harry Potter. Right, and I will do that for 4 different books. Okay, so these are my books, and as you can see, each of them has the class book, and they also have these special classes. There's the red book, okay, which is used by 2 of them. So the first and the third have this red book, and there's the class blue book, which is which the second and the fourth one have. Right, I just did this so that we have some nice design pattern. We'll be changing some stuff and making them look nicer. All right, so we want to create a paragraph too. All right, so a paragraph with about 15 words, that should be enough, and then another paragraph with say 10 words. That should also be okay. All right, so this is what we have so far. Let's add I think that's okay for now. So let's go back to our JavaScript. Okay, so as usual, the first thing to do is to grab the elements that we are trying to change, and for our first one, we are going to do using the ID. Actually, we've already seen how to grab using the ID, which is to say get element by ID. Okay, so if you want to grab the button using its ID, say button equals button document dot get element by ID, then you pass the ID here. So let's see how we find the HTML elements using the class. All right, so I want to create a variable, call it my books. All right, and I want to set it to document.get. Instead of, now in this case, instead of ID, I want to use the class name. Okay, and as you can see over here, this one was get elements singular, but this one says get elements. All right, and that is because you can have a lot of elements with the same class name. All right, and the other ways of doing it are also here, get elements by tag name and all that. So in this case, I want to get elements by class name, and I want to pass the class that I'm using over here, and the class was book. Right, so this book that they all have. Okay, so now what I have here is not just one element, it's an array or a list of elements. It's not actually the array that you've seen before. It's called an HTML collection, but it works just like an array with just some slight difference that we don't need to mention for now. We will see it as we go along. All right, so it's called an HTML collection. But as I said, it works like an array, so we can actually log them out. So let's console.log the books out. Okay, so my books like that. Let's open our console. Okay, so these are books that have been logged here, so we can click here to open it up, and as you can see, we have these books over here. So this is the first item of the array, okay, at index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, and all that. Right, so you can log out some of them individually. So I can console.log my books of index say 2, which is this one over here. All right, and then save, and then there you have it. Okay, the third book. So since this one is actually an array or a collection of items and not just a singular item, to change their HTML, to manipulate their HTML, you have to loop through the items. Okay, remember JavaScript loops, so we are going to apply it here. So we want to say for, all right, just like we've been doing, I equals 0, I is less than my books.length, okay, because that's where we have our items. And then we want to say I plus plus, the usual, it's the same thing, nothing new. All right, so we want to loop through the books this way, so we have our loop. Right, so what do you want to change? Let's change the font family. Okay, let's change the font family, the style. So you want to say my books of I, okay, and then you want to change dot style. All right, and then you want to say dot font, sorry, dot style dot font family. Right, and then you want to set it to cursive. Right, then save. So there you have it. So you see our style or the font family for our text has been changed to cursive over here. Now notice that this is a CSS property, and if we were going to do it in CSS, it would have looked something like this, right? Font hyphen family. Okay, but in JavaScript we remove the hyphen and then we use camel casing. Okay, so if you are going to change anything at all, something like let's say background color, for example, instead of background hyphen color, you use background color, you join them and then use camel casing. All right, so let's try something different. Let's change the color of the books that contains the class red book to red. Okay, so let's use an if statement. This is an opportunity to use if statement. So you want to say if my books, all right, of I, okay, dot class list dot contains, okay, and what are we looking for? Dot contains red book, the class red book. Okay, what do we want to do? We want to change the style, okay, of my books I. We want to change the color and want to change it to red. Okay, so there you have it. So all the elements that have the class of, let me increase the size a bit. All right, so all the elements that have the size, the class of red book, which is the first one and then the third one, have now been changed to red. So let me just quickly take you over what we just did here. So first we loop through the items in my books using the JavaScript for loop, okay, and at every loop, remember how loops work. So it will go through the first time, the second time, and the first time I will be 0, the second time I will be 1. Okay, so for each time, okay, so my books, and then you remember how we access the content of a list using the indexing. Okay, so in the first case where I is 0, my books I will be my books of the item at the 0 index, which is the first item over here, which is the first book. Okay, dot style dot font family. Okay, so there you can change all the styles over there, and as I said, you can use the tooltip. Once you type the style, it will give you all the suggestions that you can possibly change, and we change the style to cursive, and that's how we have all of them with this cursive font family kind of thing. All right, and we went ahead to create an if statement. So we want to change HTML depending on some class that it has. So if you have the element has the class of red book, we want to give it a red color, and then we used an if statement. So we said if, okay, and in our parentheses where we put the condition, we say that if my books of I, and in the first case I, as I said, will be 0, so that will be the first book, okay, and the second time it will run I will be 1, so that will be the second book. So if my book dot class list dot contains, okay, this well, don't worry too much about some of these commands. As we go along, you see a lot of them, the most commonly used ones, and then you you know, you become conversant with them, right? But for now, some of them may seem a bit strange. Don't worry. All right. So dot class list over here, this command means that the classes of that element which we selected here, and this dot contains is simply saying that if it contains what we put in the parentheses here, which is the red book, the class red book. So if it contains the class red book, what do you want to do? Okay, we want to set the style, okay, dot we want to change particularly the color, and we want to change it to red, and that's how come we have this one and this one having the red color. Okay, so we can add the else statements, and we want to say my books, if it doesn't have the red color, we want to say my books of I, okay, then to change the style dot the color, we want to change it to red, sorry, blue. Right, so there are only two conditions. It's either it's red or blue. Okay, so if the first if statement takes care of the red, we don't have to write another if again, okay, or if else again. There's only one condition left, which is whether it has the blue book class. So that will be taken care of by the else statement. All right, so there we have it, beautiful here. All right, now let's try finding elements with finding elements using the tag name. Okay, so once again, I want to do that using these two paragraphs over here. So I want to grab the paragraphs, so I'll name them paragraphs. Let's paragraphs equals document dot, once again, get element. So, and you can see that we are always saying documents. It's simple. This document represents the HTML document. So it's essentially we are saying that document, in the document, gets the element by ID. That is, get the element that has the ID, or get element by class name. Get the element that has this particular class name. Okay. So here we are going to try using the tag name. So we say get elements by tag name. This one like this, get elements by tag name, and then we want to put the tag that we are looking for. Over here we are looking for the p tag, okay, and when you use this, it will look at the document and every single paragraph element will be selected. All right, so we can console.log it to see what we have. That's there we have it. Once again, this is an HTML collection with two items, okay, and as I said, they work just like arrays. So most of the things that you can do with arrays, you can do with them. So we have our two paragraphs, and you can click on the paragraph, or when you hover over it, you see that it will highlight it over here, right? You see that it's highlighted it, and it's highlighted it. Look here, so you see that it's highlighting, right? So you can click here to show the content of this paragraph. So all these are actually properties and methods that you can do on the paragraph. Okay, you look at some of them, but a lot of them you would actually never use, and you find the content somewhere down here. Okay, so this is the content, which is the inner text, right? And then you have the second one over here. Okay, so now once again, if you want to change the properties of these elements, because it's an HTML collection, an array, I'll just use the word array even though they are not exactly arrays, okay? So because they are a collection, you want to loop through them. So once again, use our for, and then we want to say I less than 0, I equals 0, and then I less than our paragraphs dot length, right? And then finally I plus plus. You'll be doing this a lot, so get used to it. All right, so I want to change paragraphs of I, okay, dot style dot color. So we want to change the color. We want to change the color to green. Okay, so this will loop through all the paragraphs you have on the page. So if you have 1,000 paragraphs, it will loop through all of them, and then it will change their color to green. Let's save it. All right, so now we have our paragraphs being green. Finally, let us look at how we find elements using CSS selectors. All right, so if you are more comfortable with how we select elements in CSS and you'd like to use it, this is your chance. All right, so let's create some variables. Let's call this let's book equals document dot. Now to select using CSS, you use the query selector. Okay, query selector like this, and then inside the parentheses you want to use the CSS selector you want. So if it is an ID, you start with your hash just like we do in, and then you add the ID. And if it is a class, you do dots, and you use all the other methods that we use in CSS. You can use them over here. So I want to select the books. Okay, so the books had I want to select one of the books. The books had a class of book. Now when you use query selector, this very one over here, it selects the first instance. Okay, so if I say dot book, okay, there are not a lot of elements with the class of book. All these 4 elements have the class of book, right? But if I use query selector, it will only select the first instance, which is the first one over here, the Harry Potter. Okay, so actually we should have named these, given these books different names to make it look better. Let me do that. Alright, so as I was saying, it will only select the first instance. Alright, so if I console.logbook over here, alright, you see that it will give us the first instance of the book, which is the Harry Potter book. Okay, now in order to select all the elements that have the class of book, instead of using query selector, there's another method that we use. So we say let's create a variable, name it books, and then we say document dot, instead of query selector, use query selector all. All right, use query selector all like this, and then you want to select all those that have the class of book like that. Let's console.log our books. Okay, so there you have it. So this one also presents or returns what you call a node list. Once again, this is also similar to an array. It's a list of items. Okay, the details is a bit advanced. Maybe sometime you might look at the differences, but for now we just consider them as a list of items. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this lesson, and I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to look at the 2 main ways of changing the HTML content using JavaScript. So I want to comment out everything we've done so far, just so that we have a clear console. Alright, so let's go to our HTML and add some content which we'll be changing using the JavaScript. Alright, so first I want to add a div, and I want to give it the ID of inner HTML text like this. Alright, and then I won't put anything in there. I'll add the content using JavaScript. I'll add another div and then call it text content test like that. Right, these are actually the 2 main ways of changing the content using the inner HTML method and then the text content method. Alright, so let's save it and go back to our JavaScript. Okay, so let me put a little comment over here. Okay, so first one we'll look at is using inner HTML. Alright, We've actually used this before when we were in the introductory lesson. We used this introductory lesson to the JavaScript DOM. We used it, but let's see it again. So let's I'll create a variable. I'll call it inner HTML tests. Let me use camel casing HTML test like that. Okay, and I'll set it to document dot get element by ID. Okay, and then the ID was inner HTML test like that. Okay, let's console.log it to make sure that we've been able to grab our element. Okay, so our element is here. It's a div, so we've successfully grabbed the element. Okay, so this is how you change the content. Okay, so I want to say our element is inner HTML text. Okay, and I want to say dot. Okay, inner HTML, that's the method, and then you set it equal to whatever HTML you want to set it to. Okay, so I can set to something like an h4, and don't forget you put it in this quotations, more like a string. Okay, so I want to set it to an h4 with a class, okay, of say paragraph, just something to remember what I told you about using quotations inside quotations. Okay, so if you use double quotations and then you want to use quotations inside again, then it's best to use single quotations so that it doesn't interrupt what you are doing. So over here, when I create the class, I'll equate it to, I'll use single quotations instead, like this. Okay, so let's say paragraph 3. Okay, like this, and let me close the tag. Okay, and inside the h4 I can see this is an h4 element. Okay, so as you can see, this is our content that has been put in there for us. Okay, so we changed it, or we put the content using JavaScript. So if I add something here, you see that it will also show over there. All right, so I can, let me change it to this, an h4 element in a div. All right, so you see it's updated over here. That is one way of doing it, using the inner HTML method. Now, the other way of doing it is using the text content method. Now, the difference is that when you use inner HTML, then you can actually add an element. Okay, for example, as we did here, you can add a whole element, an h4 element. But when you use the text content, then you can only add the text inside an element. So you can only add something like this, an h4. So there should be an element there already, and you just want to put a text inside the element. Let me show you what I mean. So let me add a little comment over here. So let's create a variable, call it text content tests, like this, and then we set it to document dot get element by ID. Over here we are going to get the second div that we created, get element by ID, and we give that one the ID of text content tests, like this, right? Let's console.log it, make sure we've successfully grabbed our elements. All right, so that one too is there. Yes, that's the second div with an ID of text content. All right, now let's change its content using the text content method. Okay, so you want to see text content test dot text content. Okay, another way is to use the inner text as we have over here. All right, it's just like the text content. So you see text content. All right, and then we create it to, as I said here, you can't use an element. So let's actually try using an element and see what happens. So let's set it to an h4 like we did before, and let me close the h4. and inside here I'll say this is another element. So you see what happened over here. So it logged out the entire so it considered even the tags as elements, okay, sorry, as text, because when you use the text content, it's expecting that everything inside the quotations is text. So don't do that. If you want to add the whole element, use the inner HTML. All right, so there we have it. Beautiful. Okay, so that is it for this lesson, and I will see you in the next lesson. Sometimes you want to perform some certain actions when something happens. Now, this something that happened for you to perform the action is what we call an event. Okay, example of an event could be a click. Okay, so for example, if a user clicks a particular button, you want something to happen. All right, so a click is an event, or when the page is done loading, so the page loading is an event, or when a user presses a button on their keyboard. These are all buttons, or when a form is submitted. These are all events that you can react to. So in this lesson, we are going to look at how to handle events. All right, so there are two main ways of handling events. One is to call the event in the HTML, which are called HTML events. And the second one is to add the events in JavaScript, which we've been doing so far using the add event listener, if you remember. Right? So let's try out a few of these. Let's comment out this one as usual. All right, save, clear console. So let's go back into the HTML. Let's add a simple H2 maybe, and then let's give it an ID of, let's say, heading. Doesn't really matter. All right, now you can add the event here, okay, using one of the attributes. You can add it here as an attribute. So I can, let me actually finish putting together the H2. Okay, so you can see, all right, so this is our H2. Let's save it. Okay, so there it is. All right, so you can add a click event to this H2. So you say that on click, like that. Okay, now on click, what do you want to happen inside this on click attribute here? Inside the quotation mark, you can put every JavaScript you want over here. So inside here, the code that goes here is JavaScript. So I can say on click, I want to do an alert. Okay, and what do I want to alert? Oh, I'll do an alert. Let me use single quotations so that it doesn't interfere. So I'll alert hello. All right. So this is valid JavaScript code. Let's save it and see what happens. So essentially what I just did is that I said if I click on this H2 element, okay, which is here, if I click on it, I want an alert that says hello. So let's click on it and see. Click. There you have it. All right. That's one way of doing it. So you can write all the code you want here, but that's not very neat, right? Another way is to call a function. So I can call a function here. Let's say let's give the function a name. Let's say do something, and then you call it like we always call functions. Okay, now once you call the function over here, you can go into your JavaScript and create the function here, or you can create it right inside the HTML using the script tags as we mentioned before. So this will be like an internal JavaScript, okay, which I said is not a good idea, but just to show you it will work. Okay, so I can create the function here, all right, and I can do the alert here instead. Okay, say hello. Oh, I always forget the function keyword. All right, let's save it. Now let's go and click our H1 and see what happens. Now you realize that because I'm on this side of the code, for me to click this for it to work, I have to first click on this window over here to make the window active. Then I can click. But if I come from here and click directly, now the window is active, so I can go ahead and click on it, and there you go. So it's working. All right. So this another way, right? But it's not good to write your JavaScript inside the HTML file. The best way to do is to write your JavaScript separately from HTML. So we've called the function here, okay? Now we can go into our JavaScript, okay? And then we can create the function over here, all right? I should have just copied the function instead of delete. Okay, so I've cut it now. So you can go into our JavaScript and create the function over here. Now we don't need the script tags, right? Like this, and this should also work. There you go. All right. Okay, so how is it that we created or we call the function here and then we create the function here in a different file and it works? The reason is very simple. This file and that file, remember that they are connected because we connected them over here. So writing it here, okay, writing this code here is just like I'm writing it inside this script tag. Okay, it's just the same as writing it inside the script tag. That's how come it works. So you can do a lot of other stuff. So let me copy and paste this one down and change this one. There are a number of events. Let me give you some of them. So these are all examples of events that you can have. So among the mouse events, okay, these are actions that mouse can perform. So you can have an on click, that is when a user click. You can also have on double click when the user double clicks. You can have on mouse over when the user mouse over the thing or hover over it. Okay, you can have on mouse leave, that is when the user hovers and then leaves. Hover, leave. So this and this are kind of like opposite. And you can have on select, that is when the user select. Okay, so we will try out a few of these, and these are keyboard events. This on key down when the user presses a key, and then on key up when the user releases the key that they pressed. And you can have form events, which includes submit, that is when a form is submitted. All right, so we've created another H2. Instead of on click, let's do something like on select. Okay, and realize that once you type on, they give you all the possible suggestions. So on change, on drag, on abort, on all these are all events. Okay, these are some of the mouse events. On mouse down, mouse move. You can actually play around with them and see what they do. If you want to know more about them, if you don't know what they do and you want to work with them, you can quickly go online and then search maybe something like JavaScript on mouse down, or JavaScript events on mouse down, or on progress, on blur, on whatever, right? And you can play around with some of them. There's on drag over, on drag leave, all these ones are there. So let's try on mouse over. On mouse over is more interesting. All right, and then we want to change the function to do say mouse over like this. Let's go into our JavaScript. First you have to save it, otherwise it will not work. So let's go into our JavaScript and create the function here. Function is called do mouse over. All right, and inside the function you want to alert something. Okay, so you want to alert we are mousing over. Let's save it. I've closed the developer tools so that we try our mouse over. If the developer tools is there, you get issues trying the mouse over, so you can also close it. Now once I mouse over the second heading over here, the second one, you see that it will bring the alert. You see, so that's the mouse over. It's interesting actually. So let me bring back my developer tools and I'll console.log. Sorry, I'll comment out this one. I don't want to be getting alerts all the time like that. Right, so there are a number of them as well. There are as I said over here, there's on select and all the ones that I showed you. You can play around with them and then see how they work. Now going forward, we are going to switch into a more project-based learning. Okay, there are a whole number of things. The possibilities are just endless when you are dealing with JavaScript. All right, the possibilities are endless. So we are going to start looking at a few projects here and there, and that will help us get in shape with regards to JavaScript. Thank you for persevering for this long. I know it hasn't been easy for you. The journey has been difficult, and actually it's going to get even more difficult, and then it will become easy. So continue to persevere for me, and I will see you in the next lesson. Okay, sorry. Actually, we are not done yet. So there's one more event. I said there are two ways. Either you do it in the HTML or you do it in the JavaScript. So we looked at the HTML events over here. Looked at the one click on mouse over, and we've said there are a number of them as well. So you can have events in JavaScript, and we've actually seen that already. So I don't have to do much. But just for the heck of it, let's do another one. Okay, so I want to have another paragraph here, and this time I won't have any HTML event over here. Alright, and our IDs shouldn't be the same. So this one, let's make this one heading 2, this one heading 3. So let's go back to our JavaScript. Okay, let's select the last heading. So let's create a variable, call it heading. Okay, and document dot get element by ID, as we've been doing, and we named it heading 3. Right. Okay, let's console.log it to make sure, just to make sure we've got it. Heading. Okay, so there's null here, which means we didn't get the elements. So let's go and see what is wrong. Okay, we didn't save. All right, so now we have our elements. Okay, so let's add an event using JavaScript, and this is actually the preferred way of doing it. Okay, it's much cleaner. Okay, so and when you use this way, okay, let's finish and then I'll explain to you the difference between using the events in JavaScript. This is called the event handler. All right, so we see we call the elements heading, and then we add an event, the event handler, and this is called add event. This we use the command add event listener. Okay, and then there are two parameters. Okay, the first parameter is the event you want to listen for, and as you can see, they've given me all these suggestions here. So blur, cancel, can play, click, close, cut. You can go online and check out on mouse. You remember mouse over, mouse move, mouse down, all those ones that you can do in HTML is the same things that you can do here, but with a little different way of doing it. So I'll just do a click. Okay, event, and the second parameter is a function. It actually has 3 parameters, but for this level we only worry about the first 2. It's the function that you want to call. Okay, so over here you can write the function inside here straight away. Okay, so using an anonymous function. Remember, an anonymous function is a function that doesn't have any name. Okay, so we can do alerts over here. See, let's just alert anything here. Okay, so this is our third paragraph. Let's click it. So our alert is working. All right. Okay, but instead of writing the function here straight away, you can call a function, or you can give a reference to a function like we did in the previous lesson. Okay, so I can give a reference to a function, okay, like this. And remember, you don't have to call the function. If you do this, it will call the function straight away, and you don't want that. You want the person to click before the function is called, so you only give a reference to the function. All right, so you did this way. Don't include the parentheses, don't forget that. And then you go ahead and create the function somewhere else. So you can create the function on top or below, it still works. So you create function, all right, like this. Okay, and then you want to add whatever code you want to run over here. So in this case we can do something like this, and this should also work. All right, there you go. There you go. All right, now all what we've been doing so far, we haven't been adding any parameters to the functions. Like when we did the on click, we can actually add a parameter here. Remember parameter, right? Okay, we can add a parameter here. You can add but over here to add a parameter is a bit tricky. You'll see that as we go along and as we do our project. I'll see you in the next lesson.